So we notice your cross-cultural and religious analysis of economic systems. So like in your books, you say culture on one hand, and then for the other, it's religion. And do you think there's a difference between culture and religion from an economic standpoint? I know previously in our
Yeah.
episode you had said religion is a like a subsect
Mhm.
of culture. And what do you think makes it a subsect and the differences between the two and how that plays in economy?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's two things of importance here to this question. One is that, so the way we think about culture, the way, is the way cultural anthropologists thinks about culture. It's kind of an internal mapping that you have in your brain from seeing things in the world, and the world's very complex. So culture kind of gives you these shortcuts in how to interpret the world. And it's, by nature, it's social. It's something that you see other people doing in your society. You probably gain a lot of it from your parents. Early in life, you gain it from peers. You might gain it from teachers, things like that, that really kind of shape the way that you think. And I think that religions are very, there's certain aspects of religions that are very similar, that they give you a way of interpreting the world around you. Now, a big difference between what we would call religion and more broadly culture is that religion, especially say of the Abrahamic faiths, but even outside as well, some many Eastern religions have this as well, is that there are institutions associated with religion. So you think of big churches, or just synagogues or mosques, things like this, where you have hierarchies of individuals who are religious authorities, that it's much more organized in a way than most aspects of culture are. Culture is something that's it's very disorganized in a way. It's something that's not even conscious, that gets transmitted from one generation to another.
Kind of
I
like how
certainly,
American culture developed and like it wasn't necessarily something spoken of, it was an unspoken development across like a multitude of causes.
yeah, and even when we say American culture, there's many subcultures within the U.S.
Melting
and
pot,
the
yeah.
way, yeah, the way that the United States, or sorry, not the way that social scientists think about culture too. It's something that's really transmitted. It's transmitted within the family, at least initially. I certainly, my kids have certain cultural beliefs that they share with me, but not fully, because they've been since influenced by going out in the world, things like that. So, and that's where you get this really kind of the social aspect of culture that, as you call it, maybe an American culture. So I'm in Southern California. There's certainly a culture here that's quite a bit different than other parts of the United States. And religion, we can certainly think to some degree that is because if you want the best predictor of what religion um, somebody is, you just say, well, what's the religion of their parents? This is something that, it's not that we have this menu of religious options and we have a blank slate and we can just choose. We're influenced heavily early in life when it comes to religion. So we certainly, there's a lot of similarities between the two. But again, I think the biggest difference is this kind of institutional aspect of religion. And the reason that's so important, stuff we've kind of been talking about here, is that the institutions allow religion to play a much stronger role in politics, say, and that can really have big economic consequences, and it has historically, with religious authorities either playing a big role in directly in politics or influencing politics indirectly. That is because of the institutional organizations that religion has. There's a much more direct pathway to that happening than what we might think of as as culture. Even though culture clearly influences economic and political decision making as well, it's just a little bit more direct with religion. Obviously, there's other differences. In religion,
No,
really,
yeah.
it deals with the supernatural and things like this. But
Yeah,
for when
yeah.
we're talking about the economic impacts of it, I think that that's the big one. Is the more the organizational aspects of it.
Because like religion is more organized, it's easier to track a direct impact.
Yeah, and it's also just easier for it to have a direct impact, because the organization helps solve all the types of collective action problems and coordination problems that
Yeah.
that really kind of decentralized or dispersed kind of cultural, maybe what we'd call cultural entrepreneurs have a hard time doing.
And while like cultural is definitely has its impacts, it's more like understood rather than like a cohesive belief. So that's why it's like less hard to, I mean, it's harder to like gauge as a cause or gauge as a
Perhaps.
coordination organization.
Perhaps. I mean, sometimes it's easy to gauge. You might think of say like anti-immigrant sentiment can be a kind of a cultural thing,
Yeah.
right? That you can gauge that, So, but also, it's also the type of thing that is there are organizations that have emerged on that front, but on the other hand, there's it's nothing like you don't have like a Catholic Church of of those types of cultural beliefs, right? That
Yeah.
kind of package those together. And in fact, a lot of cultural beliefs, there's several cultural beliefs in the United States that are not religious at all. But if you want the best predictor of having those cultural beliefs or what religious denomination the person is.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of those are on the religious, on the political spectrum too. If you want, if you want the best predictor of whether somebody voted for Donald Trump, for instance, the best thing you need to know is whether they're evangelical Christian or not.
Wow. Yeah. That's interesting. Is that why, like, maybe in like Soviet Union, Russia, like during that time, they say that even though there was like no mandated religion, a lot of people say like the religion became the state and the state doctrine because that was a culture preached so heavily and so specifically that kind of consolidated into a direct religion.
But then
Yeah, I
even
mean, yeah,
oh, sorry. But
yeah,
then
no, it's
even
just
in the Soviet Union, they took it a step above. It wasn't so much that the state was forcing itself to be a religion to the people, not so much that the people were choosing that to be their religion. Like the state, uh, they looked at what other religions would do. They created their own holidays focused around the revolution, and they enforced it onto the people rather than the people enforcing it onto themselves. So I don't know if that's
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, there's certainly aspects of communist state ideology that have a lot of what you might call the characteristics that social scientists have seen in religion apply there as well, for sure. I mean, I think when we think of ideology, religious ideology is one type of ideology, but there's a lot of similarities across religious and non religious ideology, and you can analytically you can study it the same way.